Hey, everybody. Absolutely stunning news over here this week. We have a video version of this week's episode available on our Patreon, which is patreon.com/late night. Go over there, sign up at any tier, and you'll have access to it. Once again, that's patreon.com/late night. Now, enjoy the show. So remind me, Dan, where are you based?
Calgary, Alberta.
Calgary. Great. Did you grow up out there or did you just find yourself there?
Here. I'm from here. I've moved away a couple times and I always come back.
Is the cold weather really just what keeps you there?
No. I'm not a huge fan of the cold. But you know, like my family's from here and I love this awful city. There's a great song by the band Los Campesinos called The Fall of Home. It's very much sort of about the trend in the UK of like, there's so many problems in all of these small towns because everybody my age, all of the millennials, were like, hey, this place is kind of backwoods and homophobic and all of these other like issues. I'm just going to leave. And it's a complicated subject because you should, in fact, just like be allowed to and be like, it's not bad to just leave, but there's been a social consequence on these places that it's like there's been a drain of like people taking over. And so it's like, oh, so the support networks that were there, like the youth clubs, the you know, school support, extracurricular activities, you know, kind of all of the other stuff, like it's just falling apart because there's no like 30-year-olds to run those things because they all just up and moved out. And then you go back and you visit and it's like, oh man, home is such a garbage trash place that's dying. I'm glad I left. And so it's a really kind of poignant song about the complicated consequences of these decisions on like the timescale of decades. Yeah.
I wonder at which point, because of price increases and cost of living in cities, does this trend? I mean, we've already seen this somewhat Layden and I are both LA based. We have a ton of friends who have fled California, not because of they don't like the vibe, but because they just can't afford to live here anymore.
The vibe is not affordable.
Yeah. Yes. Or more accurately, it's not that they can't afford it. It's just you realize how much more you'd get if you were someplace that had less stuff.
Yeah, it's like, all right, I need to move like an hour beyond even like Long Beach just in order to find something that I need to afford. If it's like, all right, it's already like an hour from like Central to Long Beach, Anaheim sort of radius. If I need to be another hour past that, I might as well be in Montana.
Yes, totally.
Like it's the same difference. You know, at a certain point, you're just away.
And it's interesting to see this cascade of cost of living. It starts in the big city, New York, LA, whatever. And then, you know, it was like Portland, Seattle. Okay. And Seattle had Microsoft, et cetera. And now you're starting to see it in Bozeman and Boise, in these kind of third tier cities where Portland was too expensive, so we're going to Boise. A couple friends of mine moved to Boise. All right, now Boise is getting too expensive. So it feels like there might be some reversal of this, hopefully coming, where these quote unquote smaller towns, which are still generally pretty big cities, you know, start to get these support structures back as their population increases, as people flee the more expensive places.
Yeah, hopefully, ideally. I mean, the worry is that people will move into these spaces, but they'll move in as basically like remote robots.
Right. Tourists.
Yeah, they won't set down roots. They won't integrate themselves into the community. So like just my neighborhood has like two halves to it. One is like the slightly older development, and then we've got like brand new development. And the brand new development has all been targeted at like tech workers, particularly like tech workers on visa. And just the difference in the two halves of the community in terms of like foot traffic and how the community has actually been designed. Calgary's already like terrible with the fact that it's so car centric, but then this like new development, it's like cosplay. There's these like water feature centerpieces that look like a park that you would want to like sit next to, like, oh, like this little sort of artificial babbling brook, this like nice fountain, there's these good stones. It is not actually like walkable at all. Like the grade of the actual like green space, it's just really awkward. You wouldn't want to actually like sit there. You wouldn't want to hang out there. You can't toss a ball there. It's meant to look good while you're driving past it. It's like in the same way that Disney creates the illusion of a 3-story building, of a 5-story building, just by like compressing everything. It looks like a green space from a distance, and then you get up to it on foot and it's the wrong dimensions.
Yeah. I assume that the answer to this is going to be yes, because it's true everywhere. Has hipsterification set in? You know, Edison bulbs, which are now old school, that sort of thing. Are you getting that hipstery vibe there?
Yeah, for sure. Calgary's a lot of people overlook it, but we were getting like a gastro pub with the Edison bulbs. We were getting that in 2000. Like when it was just like a new vibe. Like that's going out of style now.
I know. Isn't that weird?
You know, it's a 12, 15-year-old look. So
what's the new style? Leighton, you might be better equipped to answer this than
you
me.
Pointed at the young person on this call.
Well, you know, you're art-minded, but I feel like that hipsterification, the Edison bulb, the Ace Hotel, if you will, kind of vibe is going a bit out of style. Is there a clear contender for what's replacing it?
I feel like this is really exemplified in the Instagram branding change, because it used to be the old-timey camera. And then we shifted to this ugly ass, like, look, as a big proponent of gradients, as somebody who constantly uses gradients, the Instagram gradient, it does not work. Regardless, everything is gradients, all like Tumblr style, lowercase, simple white text with a period or like a Lee at the end of the name. Like, I think it's very minimalist. It's very sterile feeling. It's like corporate Memphis, but a physical location.
Yeah.
And then the rougher stuff is going a little bit more industrial. You're seeing a lot of like fake bolts, a lot of fake rust.
Yes.
And rustic never really goes out of style, but rustic has been on the up and up for, 6-7 years now. And so it's probably going to peak in mainstream in the next like 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then give it another 15 years and whatever the YouTube equivalent in 15 years is, where it's like, 2010s, hipster nostalgia. And it's just like a 10-hour playlist of like lo-fi Carly Rae Jepsen on top of, weird liminal spaces, images of these weird Edison bulbs.
So I was talking with my wife yesterday about, it seems like the 70s are once again back. Like they were back in the 90s doing that every 20 years thing. And now they're back again. And at least for me, this is the first time in my life. I'm just under 50. I'm 48. So maybe this happens all the time. Maybe it doesn't. I don't have enough data. But to see a decade that came back once and now is coming back again. Do you agree with this about the 70s? They're kind of back again. Everyone knows fucking watching Columbo. Yeah. Like, okay, I love Columbo.
So
like,
that's my fault. That's my generation's fault. That's Gen Y. So Gen Y, we're all turning 40. We're either solidly in our 30s or those of us at the top end are entering our 40s. So we were teenagers in the 90s. Gen X, like you were teenagers in the 90s, but you were like late teens in the 90s.
Yes.
We were like 10 to 20. Like it was our entire teen years were encompassed in the 90s. And so we had all the Gen X bands who were like singing about when they were like young teens, the music from the 70s, and we had the aesthetic of that. And then you start to realize that like, okay, Smashing Pumpkins, 1979, huge hit in 1995. It is older now than the time period that the song is about.
Yes.
So all of this stuff that we had in our formative years that was all these like references to the 70s are now even farther from us in the present.
Oh yeah.
Like the references are farther than the references were from the thing that they were referencing. The gap between now and the 90s is wider than the gap between the 70s and the 90s.
Yes.
And so there's that like panic of, oh, well, I've got to reclaim, like I need to reclaim my youth, especially since so many of my generation, like there's that perception of just like our adulthoods were kind of like stolen from us. So it's like you entered into adulthood in the immediate wake of 9/11, which set a lot of things on the back foot. Then, maybe like right around the time that like you're starting to go, it's like, yeah, I should really be taking the next like step in life. Global financial crisis. There's no jobs because nobody's retiring. Then global financial crisis. Then just the 2010s and, you finally start thinking, it's like, all right, I'm 35. Something needs to start going right. Trump gets elected. Next thing you know, it's like, all right, maybe things will finally start leveling out. I'm closing into my 40s pretty quick here. Pandemic.
So if you were going to go one tragedy back from 9/11.
One tragedy back from 9/11?
August 4th, 1997.
Yeah. So we have in your list here,
That's my birthday.
It's 9/11, then it was financial collapse, then it's Trump, then it's pandemic. What's the previous one to 9/11 if you were going to pinpoint it?
If you're in an affected community, the AIDS crisis.
Yep, that's a good one.
If you're not in an affected community, it'd be the oil crash.
Stagflation and
the oil crash
70s,
in the Carter administration. Yeah. You're going back to maybe before I was born.
Yeah. And for a lot of people, that's a pretty big gap between if you weren't really affected by the AIDS crisis. That's a decent gap of 15 plus years.
The AIDS crisis was devastating, but mainstream communities did a very aggressive and effective job of insulating themselves from the effect and shunting it off onto making sure that other people bore the brunt of that one.
Yeah.
So in terms of this affected you directly, materially, forced its way into your life and changed the course of your life, regardless of who you were, where you were, anything on your part, you really are looking at late 70s. But then, of course, before that, you've got this kind of the same sort of chain of turmoil, if you were in that generation where
Vietnam.
It's Vietnam, where that is also kind of this one thing after another.
Feels like it's Vietnam, before that Kennedy, before that probably World War II or Korea, I guess Korean War.
Korea. And the thing is Vietnam's a big one. And that obviously ruined an entire generation of young men and just needlessly destroyed millions and millions of lives. But then, American mainstream culture did such a good job of making other people bear the externalities. And the entire thing with the civil rights movement was entirely about that of it's hey, we are going to do whatever we can to try to impose some of these externalities back on the mainstream culture, because otherwise it'll be endlessly invisible to you. Because there was just this really long period between World War II and Vietnam where it was just oh, we can just do a really good job of making sure that the people who bear the brunt of the bad things that happen in society are people we don't care about. Our people that is we're happy for them to suffer. So it kind of took a while before things started happening that really did not care so much about.
Yeah. And of course, you mentioned Trump, which for a significant portion of the population was not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And I think by any objective standards, it was awful. But there are a lot of people who are very happy about it, right?
For people who were stoked, it's all of the issues that a Trump presidency brings is displaced on all the people that I don't like. So really, it's a win for me.
The thing there is that, it's very much a minority inflicting their grievances on the rest of the world. And if they suffer in the process, because the thing is that a Trump presidency was objectively bad for a lot of Trump supporters, but they didn't care because that was the cost they were willing to pay to make other people suffer.
Because it felt like winning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was more important. To turn it back to a slightly lighter topic, to get back to the 70s thing.
I love that this is the
a lighter topic,
we went
the
down.
1970s.
Yeah, when everyone was happy all the time. The interesting thing to me about the 70s coming back is, and this is maybe just because I wasn't paying attention, I didn't see this with the 60s. I didn't see the 60s come back 10 years ago or whatever in the same way I see the 70s coming back now. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe I just missed it. Maybe also social media was kind of in its infancy or adolescence maybe 10 years ago. So maybe it's just that I wasn't paying attention or it was harder to find out what people were doing. But I didn't see that same thing with the 60s.
Yeah, the complicated thing with the 60s is that the identity of the 60s is kind of fabricated in retrospect, that a lot of things that we identify with the 60s visually are, one, they're a very kind of overwhelming aesthetic, the psychedelia and stuff. But a lot of that stuff is actually really late 60s, and a ton of it is actually early 70s. Yes. And for the most part, the look of the 60s was the 50s.
Yeah.
And so there is kind of this, like, I think, disconnect between reality and sort of perception, that you've got this very narrow slice of like psychedelic subculture in the late 60s with that like flower power, bell bottoms, that it's like, oh, the 60s look. But that was really like this really narrow slice of time. And it's so distinct that you're kind of doing it like as a bit. Whereas the 70s, you know, a lot of that like 60s look was in fact the 70s. And so the 70s is longer. It's a little bit more calcified. There's also the just reality that like, there's this great meme that goes around where it's like, oh, you grew up in the 80s and it's this bedroom that's got like a Nintendo controller, coffee table, and like it's got the Taco Bell geometry wallpaper and, you know, Cyndi Lauper poster and a keytar in the corner and like all this stuff. And it's like, no, I grew up in the 80s, wood paneled hallway with a giant crucifix at the end.
Yeah.
Because the things that really define a decade tend to be the things that were built the decade previously. Because people build things and then they don't go away. Like that was Robert Moses' whole thing. It's like, if you build a bridge, it's really hard to take it down because people get used to it being there. And so what we define as the 70s look, it is in its own way a post hoc creation, an amalgamation of like different looks that were popular across like probably 15, 20 years, like in aggregate, you know, add 5 on either side. So like 1965 to 1985 is our 70s look. But then even then, things like earth tones, that it's like, all right, well, let's move from like high saturation primaries. And then we move away from that into just kind of like gradients of, it's like, oh, like let's get a lot more like oranges, browns, tans, and whatnot, just in the style. And we perpetually swing back and forth from that. But then we've got the 1970s, which are extremely well documented. 99% of it is in modern looking color television, modern film stocks. You can find a photo of 1976 that looks like it was taken yesterday. So there's a documentation aspect to it as well.
Totally.
There's like a dovetailing ethos-wise, I think, with like beauty and fashion where, you know, we had this Instagram makeup, like everything's very, you know, tight, crop tops, whatever. Yeah. And then I think over the course of the pandemic, where nobody's going anywhere and doesn't have to be seen outside of a little square on a computer for a lot of people, nobody's wearing bras anymore. Makeup has gotten very, very simple and like natural, like as a curtain bangs haver. Curtain bangs are in like flowy, sort of comfortable. I think it kind of like lines up with this shift away from these like super high maintenance kind of styles.
On the makeup front, what I'm seeing happen there is a polarization. So like a lot of it is shifting. And also with like the fashion, you were saying that it's like bras are kind of going out of fashion, or are like what's in vogue right now is very sort of like minimalized, no wires, no push up. You know, it's just like cozy wear effectively. So a lot of fashion is shifting kind of this like cozy wear, or it's going super extreme. You're getting like the really, really like big high contrast wings. You're getting really bold eyeshadows. It's not rouge. It's like, it's basically face paint in a lot of cases. Because the thing is that the webcam flattens so much that it's like, why am I going to put on like an air quote, like natural look that's got like a pretty significant amount of foundation? It's going to look the same on the other side of the webcam. So I might as well save the 10 minutes and just like, not.
And I mean, that's a really 70s makeup thing to do, of these big, like mod bright colors. Like,
or I'm going to go so extreme that like anyone on the other side of the webcam, like they absolutely can see like the work that I've put in because it's high contrast, it's bold, it stands out.
Well, speaking of being high contrast and bold, this is Late Night with Brian Wecht. And my name is Brian Wecht. Over here we have Leighton Gray. Say hi, Leighton.
Oh, that was so appropriately embarrassing a transition to introducing the show.
I've been trying to get worse at those, and I feel like I succeeded.
Good job. I'm Leighton, the previous tragedy to 9/11. And as Brian said, this is Late Night with Brian Wecht, and mystery guest who I'm so excited that we have here today. Would you care to introduce yourself?
My name is Dan Olson. I'm a YouTuber or YouTube documentarian from Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Yeah.
And what's the name of your YouTube channel or videos that you've made that people might be familiar with?
So the series name is Folding Ideas on YouTube.
Leighton and I are both huge fans of what you do. I mean, like really, really impressive, wonderful stuff. So we're very, very excited to have you on.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah. Well, okay. always want to talk about some specific things from the videos, and I think we're going to dive into it right now. So the first thing, I was looking through your channel again today. So context, I used to be a physics professor. So before I quit academics to be a full-time YouTuber, I was a theoretical physicist. I worked on string theory and particle physics and all that. Did the whole academic route, got a professor job, and then quit to dress up like a ninja and be a YouTuber. So I rewatched how did these physicists get in a flat Earth? Or sorry, geocentric, not flat Earth. It's different, sorry.
Yeah.
And first of all, one of my favorite things of that video was an omission, actually, where nobody is surprised that Michio Kaku was in this movie.
No one.
And you didn't even you mentioned he was there and then spent no time on him because people are like, that fucker will say anything.
Yeah.
So, of course, that
Michio
makes sense.
Kaku, I was like, makes sense that he's there. Max Tegmark, unfortunately, it makes sense that he's there just because he's kind of gullible. I mean, this is based off of a bunch of information that came out after that. It turns out that like he actually has gotten suckered into like a bunch of scams.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I was a postdoc at the Center for Theoretical Physics at MIT where Max was, like, I don't know if he was part of that staff, but I saw him around at talks and stuff like that. Like he was a, loosely defined a colleague. I know he's famous for this like hierarchy of multiverses and, big idea kind of stuff. I had no idea he had been scammed. What were the scams? Do you remember?
It was about like 6-8 months ago. He was inadvertently like funding this like extremist campaign. And then when asked about it, he was like, I have no idea like what they were doing. Like they just kind of came to me and asked for funding, and he did like no due diligence. Like, and then like a little more digging, and it's like he just kind of seems as like a really credulous guy who inherently believes in the goodness of humanity to a degree where it's like maybe be a little more suspicious.
Yeah, where Krauss is quite the opposite. I don't want to say anything legally actionable, but I have not had the best experiences with
Krauss also doesn't surprise me that he shows up. If you look at the comments, a lot of the comments are like, why didn't you go harder on Krauss? I'm like, I don't, we're not getting into Krauss today. Like,
that's
there was a lot I could say. There was a lot
of,
it's like, if we start talking about Krauss, we're never going to get around to talking about these Christian extremists that we're here for.
Which was the more interesting part of that particular video. It's always fun to see people I like talk about theoretical physicists looking like idiots, and that video squarely fit that niche for me. So thank you for that one. I really enjoyed it. The line goes up thing is probably that's your most popular video. Is that true?
By a lot, yeah.
So at the risk of being glib, how often do people ask you, do you finally feel like, yeah, I fucking told you so after the last 6 months?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes both ways. I mean, so the fact that I eventually just kind of went into hiding from the response to Line Goes Up. So like normally I put a video out and then like there's usually about 2-3 weeks, like really about 2 after it comes out where like, it's getting a lot of comments and maybe it gets posted in a like what's hot this week sort of like article or like watch this, a decent amount of traffic on Reddit. And so for Line Goes Up, it was really popular with journalists. And journalists obviously have an outlet, and it was popular with podcasters, and podcasters obviously have an outlet. And so it was just like I was getting so much contact about it that kind of never seemed to die down. It was like, oh, I'll take February off and then I'll deal with it. And it's like I spent February like answering media requests. And I was like, okay, like it'll die down at the end of the month. It'll be fine. And then it didn't really die down in March. It didn't really die down in April until like it didn't really die down until I just like stopped answering answering emails and was getting, it's like, hey, are you willing to come down to LA? And I was just like, I'm just going to ghost you. I'm not driving down to LA right now. Sorry.
And I mean, that sounds so exhausting on top of the like postpartum, I've spent so much time working on this thing and now it's out.
And trying to pivot into like making something else.
Yeah.
Like it was exhausting.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. So because of that, like I do get tagged often with like, Dan warned you.
Yes.
But not a lot of people being like, hey, do you want to react to like the FTX thing? And I think part of that also comes down to the fact that like the video came out and the crash kind of started like later that afternoon. So in terms of like the good timing of the release, like it already came out kind of on the precipice, which you look at the charts now and you're like, yes, there's the precipice. So it was already like in its initial waves sort of discussed in this context of like, a lot of this contagion is something that could be seen coming from a distance just by doing any kind of actual honest due diligence about the nature of the ecosystem.
And how long were you working on Line Goes Up?
About a year.
That shows. I mean, the thing is a monumental achievement. Everything about it radiates, oh my God, this is a tremendous amount of work in the best way.
Yeah. So I've been following crypto since its inception, 2009 in various capacities. But it was the first Beeple sale, not the Everydays one, the one before that sort of first got this like really back on my radar. And then I was like touching it. In May 2020, I was like, I'm going to do a video on this. And I started working on it, and I put in about 3.5 weeks of like hardcore work, and then realized that like I was never going to be fast enough to get it out. The whole time that I was writing, I was just constantly chasing like some new change, some new swing, some new thing. I was like, it's too volatile for me to keep up with. And so I put it aside, worked on a couple other projects. And then in the fall, like I started the big thread that wound up becoming very popular, where I like started joining all of the discords and was like really like going in deep. And so from about early September, the World of Warcraft expansion came out. Do I have my timeline right? I think Battle for Azeroth came out. A couple weeks later, I started really diving in. I might be completely wrong on my timelines here, but I started really diving in. And so the hardcore work started in September, and then it came out end of January.
Gotcha. Is it just you doing all the production, or do you have people you work with on that as well?
That one was just me.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like no man is an island. So I have support networks of like peers and friends and whatnot that I can like be like, hey, can I read you 10 minutes of material, and you sit there and listen to it, and I gauge the reaction on your face to see how like just bored you are, or if any of this makes any sense. So like everybody has help.
No, sure. But you're editing it and doing the animation, all the stuff.
Yeah, no structural help. I'd get feedback, but like...
That's amazing, dude.
Otherwise, it was like... And Line Goes Up in particular, I went out into like Bushwick and tracked down those murals, and and I'm hauling my camera bag out there, like setting up the camera, hit record, go stand on my bark, go back, cancel, like end the recording, replay through it. All right, am I in focus? All right, we're good to go. Check audio. Check like so.
Wow.
These solo shoots out in Bushwick. I did have a second pair of hands for one of the shoots out in New York, where a friend came along because we were headed to dinner to meet up with another friend. And so we did the ape mural that I'm like standing in front of that wound up being the thumbnail. So like I had a second pair of hands to like hit record on that one. But yeah, no, for the most part, I shoot it myself. I record it myself. I do all of the editing. I mean, I like doing the editing. I like doing the graphics. That stuff's like a lot of fun for me. It really feeds me creatively. But it does mean that like I'm slow and it takes a lot of energy. And there isn't that like moment where it's like, all right, I've done my part writing and shooting it. Now I hand it off to an editor who's going to spend a month working on it while I get started on the next thing. So that's why the release schedule, it ends up being sort of what it is. I'm very bad at multitasking in that way, that it's like, I can't start thinking about the next script until like this one is done.
Yeah.
It's really interesting how many long form, especially like documentary style people on YouTube, are so hard on themselves for their release schedule, which I completely understand because I'm incapable of not being hard on myself about anything. But it is fascinating watching people who are eminently incredibly talented and driven make these like crazy huge projects like this. And it's just like, man, I wish I was doing another one at the same time. Like, I'm just happy it's there.
You made a feature film.
Yeah,
it's okay if it took a year.
I was thinking about it in those contexts because like I follow a lot of documentary filmmakers, and one of my favorite, like Penny Lane.
Oh, she's the best.
Yeah, she's so good. Yes. We'll talk about her later because I've pre-canned an answer that involves her.
Okay.
She puts out a new doc like every kind of year and a half, 2 years at sort of pace. So there is this kind of thing where it's like, oh man, if I backed up a little bit, like if I involved just a few more people, upped my production value just one more step, like one more rung up the ladder. It's like you could back off and be just like, oh man, like, yeah, we put out a documentary in 18 months. Like that was an insane production speed. It's like, yes. Oh yeah, an hour and a half documentary in 18 months. That is actually like very normal. The fact that you're cranking these things out in like 2 to 5 months is actually insane.
Yes.
Yeah.
The amount of research alone that goes into it, and much less distilling it into something understandable and compelling and adding the whole visual element on top of that too. It's just an unbelievable amount of work.
Yeah. So to back up and answer the kind of like previous question, I've hired a co-writer. We're feeling it out. Co-writing is obviously like, it's not just a job posting. It's a full-on creative partnership. So that's helping with speed. And so like Nathan he's bringing a lot to the table as well. He's got a very different perspective. He's incredibly good at finding like a lot of really deeply buried like references and citations. And he's a lot better at keeping track of like where we found information than I am. So it's helping with like trying to improve the rigor. We're trying to improve the the speed and kind of the depth of it. And then I've hired an assistant as well, just to help with like responding to podcast invites so that I don't accidentally ghost someone for 6 months.
I'm glad you have help.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear more, if you want to talk about it, it's so interesting to me with a big success like Line Goes Up, and you're talking about the, just this feeling of overwhelm with requests and like suddenly of everybody in the world seemingly after you for a very specific thing that suddenly you are now the face of, why NFTs are bad. What was emotionally is really what I'm asking. Like, what was that like? Yeah.
Paralyzing. There was a lot of struggle about like, okay, what's the next project? Do I try and go like even bigger? Do I try to do like the sophomore album follow-up kind of thing? Like what's the subject that we pick? Or do we go the other way? Do we do the Kid A thing where it's like, all right, we put out OK Computer. We're on the cusp of being like the biggest band on earth. Hard pivot, 180 degrees. Here's OK Computer. There's no singles. Good luck. But yeah, this is not a new kind of creative anxiety that I was subjected to. But there was that like, how do you follow up the big hit anxiety? Because like for a long time I was floating like, do I just like go really hard the other way and just like, I don't know, crank out a couple of vlogs about like Spider-Man or something like that, just to kind of like temper expectations and like remind people like, this is a YouTube channel. Like at the end of the day, this is a YouTube channel.
I know other stuff, right?
I know other stuff. It's a variety subject matter. We bounce between a bunch of things. There's a common thread through all of it. This is not just the like crypto debunking whatever channel. And a lot of people have commented on like, it does seem like there's a sort of new theme in the recent videos, and like the new one that's coming out is not going to be breaking this pattern, but how there's very much like a financial sort of like thread through all of them, that it was Line Goes Up and then the Amazon scammers and then Decentraland. It's like, no, but we had World of Warcraft. Like we had just a whole thing about like sociology and World of Warcraft and online communities and like how they interact with games.
Love that video very much.
Oh, thank you.
The instrumental play and everything is just like fascinating to see from a game developer point of view about stuff that I've not really thought about. So
I enjoyed the response to that one so much because you had a bunch of people who didn't get it and were like, oh, well, thank God I play Final Fantasy 14 where this isn't a problem. But then, and I was like, you missed the point. You missed the point. Because then you had the great comments that were like, I played Disney Toontown. This proto MMO, I played it for 5 years, and let me tell you about the meta toy loadout. And so I loved all of the stories that people were sharing about just these like niche MMOs, these niche online game communities where like instrumental practices got so ingrained that it's like it's the most casual game you can imagine, and there was still this like enforced social code about like this is the correct way to play.
Yeah, I don't play it as much anymore, but people who listen to the show who play Dead by Daylight, boy, is that a good one that this video slaps another lens on, because Jesus Christ, Dead by Daylight. Everybody has that game that they're like, I hate this. I hate that I know so much about this and am so particular about these unwritten rules.
When you say Jesus Christ, Dead by Daylight, can you just elaborate on that?
It's a bad game.
Little bit? Yeah.
No, it's a really good game, but as a, inherently asymmetrical thing where you have 4 against 1, it's automatically like everybody wants to have a good time, right? But the way to have a good time is either one person making 4 people miserable or 4 people making one person want to run into traffic. It's generally like the etiquette of what is acceptable. It's very thorny. Go on any discussion. Like the Dead by Daylight subreddit is a fascinating place to go to the zoo.
Yeah.
Wait. Hold on. You expect me to believe that a video game centric subreddit has some odd social dynamics? Layden, I'll believe it when I see it.
It's difficult to believe.
Yeah.
This is my thing. I spend so much fucking time on Reddit and I cannot stop complaining about it. But will I stop using the website? No.
I mean, those asymmetrical games, they're just such a unique petri dish for those interactions because it's like you have 4 people on one side who can bully each other if you're not doing it right. You're off meta. You're going to cause us to lose. Whereas if it were just like one-on-one and it's like, and you're going to try some off meta stuff, your opponent's just going to be like, free win.
Yeah. It's maybe like the least beginner friendly game I've ever played, aside from like Civ, which is ostensibly single player mostly, but Dead by Daylight, it's like you are not even passable until like 500 hours in. Like it's such a huge time investment and you spend all of it being like, why is this fun? I don't know what anybody's talking about. You stop playing for 6 months, the meta's completely different. And then you come in and you just look like a total scrub and everybody's getting killed. So
why are you using a shotgun? It's like, because they're good. It's like, nah, they got nerfed like 5 months ago, bro.
Yeah.
What, you don't watch every single piece of, you don't read the patch notes for every update?
Notes? Yeah. Incinerate's nerfed, man. Get with the...
I watched the Decentraland one. It came out a month ago, right?
When did it come out? I guess about that. Oh.
Your YouTube page is up on my other monitor, so it says a month ago.
It's the truth sayer here. Yeah, about that. Yeah,
that reaction is so relatable. A month ago, I enjoyed that one so greatly, especially as somebody who is semi-new to doing 3D art. Just incredibly funny to see this very highly valued. I mean, the reveal of the Lynch chocolate store experience after you set it up so well with their description of it. It's so fucking funny. It's embarrassing. The whole thing is so embarrassing. I mean, how much time did you spend in Decentraland just gathering footage?
You know what? I can give you a fun metric for this. Let's see.
Please. I'm also curious how much time you spent playing Fortnite for your Fortnite video.
Fortnite was about 100 hours over the course of a month and a half, which is like a respectable. Like I definitely made sure that I put in enough time to like make sure that I wasn't talking out of my ass about the game. People did comment that it's like, hey, I noticed that most of the footage was from like basically the team deathmatch mode. And I was like, yeah, that's just because the team deathmatch mode was like a lot easier to get footage in. Otherwise, you're playing like, 20 hours just to like see an interaction that you want to talk about, like just to finally get it on camera. So I played a whole bunch of it and got a sense of like, all right, here's a bunch of sort of the interactions that you see among like players. I made a whole list of them and it was like, it's going to be just like way easier to either manufacture these or catch them organically if I just play the team mode. So the footage is lightly misrepresentational just out of like a logistical necessity to like expedite the footage gathering process. Mm-hmm. So let's see. If I go to clips, I have 176 gigs of Decentraland footage.
Wow.
Woof.
I would need to open Resolve and dump them all into a timeline. It's hours and hours and hours of clips of Decentraland. Some of them are like really targeted where it's like, all right, I know exactly what I need. Go to a spot, take a video of it. But then like even behind all of those, like how much time have I spent in Decentraland over the last 2 years? Couple hundred
more than
hours.
The average non-research user of Decentraland.
Yeah, more than the average user of Decentraland.
Oh my God.
Wow.
I think the dead mall paradigm, like you hit it so spot on, but there's something about, because I just like trawling the internet to find pockets of sorrow, just because I think the internet can contain so much like weird emotional resonance. But something like you show briefly in that video, like a memorial for a dead child that was created in Decentraland, which is a very strange dystopic hellscape for that to be in. But at the same time, it's like, what is the story here? What happened here? Is there somebody here who is actually coming to grieve at this Decentraland memorial?
So that one was originally like, there's a lot of stuff that got cut from like the speculative script of Decentraland. So there's a lot of subject matter that I can talk about in relation to it that didn't make it into the video.
Yes, please.
So the metaverse thing, one of the big things that we noticed is that very, very, very scant few of the people writing about the metaverse were actually engaging with like the implications of the metaverse, and clearly had like very little historical knowledge of like the 3D web and what people have tried in the past and like why it did or didn't work. And the big thing that it kind of comes down to is that this narrative of like the web as a city, where you walk from one website to another, because websites become visualized not as a flat abstract like document, not as a hypertext document, but as a building. This is a very compelling narrative. You think about it and you go like, oh yeah, that would be cool. Like, what if I like logged in to the web and it was this whole process of like putting on a headset and like down the light tunnel into the web. And then I'm just there in the web and it surrounds me. And if I want to go to Domino's.com to order a pizza, I need to walk down the virtual street to the virtual Domino's and then like order the pizza there.
Right. Yes. I'd like everything to take forever, please.
Yeah. Really compelling in a book, really compelling in a movie, really compelling in any situation where that narrative can be culled and crafted and manipulated and smoothed over. And there's no unexpected interactions, like where it all just like it works because it's a story and it doesn't break because it's not actually a functioning machine underneath. You know, the stairway in the back of the Tanner's household doesn't go anywhere. There is no second floor. The geometry doesn't need to make sense. That narrative starts to fall apart when you see it actually in practice, because it's like suddenly if you're a website that exists in a 3D space with neighbors, you now need to care about who your neighbors are. Maybe you do not want your memorial website to be across the street from a virtual weed store. Maybe you don't want it to be right next to like the modern Mario house.
One of a million Mario houses.
Yeah. So suddenly the idea of like that as a website, you now need to care about like who your neighbors are, immediately reveals this massive flaw of like, if I'm a business, if I'm anyone who owns a website, why would I ever like willingly subject myself to that level of uncertainty and like lack of control? Where in the real world, if you're buying a business, you're setting up like a physical store location, you do care about who your neighbors are, obviously. And a lot of like work and effort and time and energy goes into like picking who goes into strip malls or whatever. But at the same time, like as you're making that decision, you can be like reasonably confident that what the space looks like is what it's going to look like 5 years from now, is what it's going to look like 10 years from now. It'll inevitably change over time, but it's going to change on a time scale that's like really slow and that you can respond to and maneuver around. In a digital environment, your neighbors can just like sell and be replaced by a giant neon phallus like within hours. The area around you can change so rapidly, you have no control over it. And that then introduces a completely unaddressed problem of hostile design. What happens when somebody buys one lot in view of the Samsung store that's just a lag machine? It's just a cube that's full of a million physics-enabled bouncing cubes that it doesn't look like anything from the outside. All it does is ensure that anybody who walks into the vicinity of it, anybody whose computer starts loading it into memory, crashes. Because that's the thing that you can't do in real. Like if you try to do that in real life, if you purchase a plot of land in a commercial zone and you start just building something like offensive and disruptive, there are people who will come by and make you stop. Mm-hmm. They will shut off your electricity. They will evict I'm aware. You. Yeah. Because they can come there. So if you're then taking that and you're then like marrying it with this hyper libertarian idea of like my land, my rights, like, I can do whatever I want with this land. No one else has any say over it. The best they can do is issue a like politely worded letter asking me to stop. There is by design no one with the power to turn my lag machine off. That's a massive barrier to adoption because everybody that you need to adopt into that is just going to look at that and be like, I'm not going to assume that level of risk over the environment that I'm going to engage with.
Doesn't the whole thing just seem like an enormous pain in the ass, though?
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah. Right. This is the thing that I've never been able to get around with any of this stuff dating back, Second Life, blah, 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 all the way back, is it's just like, it just takes forever. With a website, I can just go there and it's right there.
Yeah.
Voicemails are annoying to listen to because you can't just read them quick. Why do I want to fucking walk to the virtual Amazon store? I don't get it.
Well, and then the thing that seemed really common with Decentraland where it's like, come here to get the service. And instead you physically walk up to it and then you click a link to go to a website.
That opens a tab.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, it just seems like such a pain in the ass.
And the fact of that is that it's like, so even the people who are engaging with it aren't willing to go all in. Like they're not willing to actually put in any effort to like integrate their service into Decentraland. They're just going to put up like a digital billboard and then have a link inside of that. And it's like, all right, that was so damning because that was the thing that told me that it's like all of these partnerships, none of them are taking it seriously. None of them actually believe in this thing because none of them are integrating. Like there was the Taco Bell wedding. The Taco Bell wedding was like the funniest because they didn't even put in a link. They put in a QR code.
Wow.
So it wasn't even like a widget that you interacted with. Basically, they just photoshopped a little infograph that they then imported as a poster, and the poster had a QR code on it and instructions to take out your phone pointed at your computer screen, take out a second smaller computer pointed at your computer in order to open the app and order your Taco Bell.
Anytime I have to scan a QR code on my monitor, that is an act of abject humiliation. I'm like, how did I get forced into this position?
That's a dominance exercise. That's somebody like flexing their power over you. That it's like, look, you are not an ascended being. You are still just an ape.
Yeah.
And you will dance for me. You will dance for your machine gods. Pull out your tiny computer and point it at your bigger computer. That's right.
It's a form of bullying, and we can just say that explicitly. I agree.
I want to hear more about this Taco Bell wedding. I saw your thread on it, but was it well attended?
There were a lot of people there.
Sorry, it was very
laggy.
Bell? Was it Bell attended? Is what you mean.
Shut the fuck up, Brian.
It was very laggy. There were a reasonable number of like attendees there, but Decentraland is so poorly run. Like there was probably a couple hundred people there. I checked the server stats at the time and they were like reasonable, but it was like a short event that did very briefly trend on Twitter, and like jumping into Decentraland for like 10 minutes is a sucky experience, but it's not a hard experience. It's not difficult to do. And so since there was a link that would send you like directly there, a couple hundred people showing up, that's objectively bad if you're looking at an ad campaign where it's like, oh, we did a social ad campaign and we had 200 clicks. I don't know, maybe fine for like an indie game just trying to get a little sales bump on Steam. Not so great for Taco Bell. Mm-hmm. So there was like that element. So like there was a couple hundred people across, I think 2-3 shards. I think about 80, 90 people in the primary shard, which I joined, and it was like basically unworkably laggy. And then the thing itself was like the disconnect. Okay. Have either of you attended an MMO wedding before?
I'm proud to say I have not.
Oh, dang it. Okay, so if I do a wedding in World of Warcraft, whether it's, a real one where like, people are actually getting married, or it's just like an RP one, the idea is that you are actually like utilizing the engine and the world in order to do that. And you and a bunch of people are going out, taking characters and bringing them out to Light's Hope Chapel specifically because you have some like emotional connection to the World of Warcraft that you then want to like encompass it either in your RP or in your actual wedding. And so you'll see them happen. Final Fantasy 14 has like taken this to a whole nother, like they've straight up built mechanics to enable this. But the idea is that like you're doing it in world. So you like the one participant is on a character, the other participant is on another character, and they're using like in-game chat to exchange their vows. And, they've got their cameras like pointed at each other, and like they're moving around in world. You got into the Taco Bell wedding. It was a pre-recorded video. It was a pre-recorded machinima. The ceremony itself was a pre-recorded machinima with avatars looking like the bride and groom that I am reasonably certain was made for them. They have no connection to Decentraland at all.
What the fuck?
What is going on?
They're not Decentraland users. So by the time I get in there, what you're actually watching is the bride and groom sitting in front of a webcam on a live stream on a virtual screen with this machinima of the ceremony looping in a picture-in-picture, with then Cal Penn in another picture-in-picture, like interviewing them. So this is the thing about Decentraland. Decentraland live events overwhelmingly don't happen inside Decentraland. You go somewhere in Decentraland, and then you stand there and look at an embedded Twitch stream.
If only there was some sort of way to have like a page with that you could put your videos or your text on that people could view as a...
You could maybe even optimize it so that like the social interaction element, like chat, is given a reasonable amount of real estate and is convenient to use, and so users can, quickly like tag each other and maybe like move it into direct messaging if their interactions are taking up too much space, and would make it easy to like moderate. And maybe you could even have a whole bunch of special interactions. Like somebody could build a plugin so that if people start spamming emotes in chat, like there's then a reactive element on the streamer side. Yeah, like it's wild the things you could theoretically do. Imagine if somebody built that.
Can you imagine going to a destination wedding? You fly out there, you put on your nice clothes.
Yeah, and then somebody just rolls out a 60-inch
Someone
TV.
rolls it. Yeah, someone rolls out a cart, shoves in a VHS. They're like, yeah, they got married a week ago.
It's the real like teacher drank too much last night approach to getting married. Just
yes, that's right.
Wheel out the TV card.
You know what? We weren't sure we could make it today, so we filmed the safety ceremony. Turns out we're not really feeling it. Honeymoon started 2 days ago. Have fun.
Yeah.
By the way, it's Cash Bar.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the vibe of it. Is it's like, oh, it's not actually happening in the space. It's not happening at all. It's happening in that physical space that we can see a video feed of. This is not the space that it's happening in. This is just a fancy looking theater to watch this embedded live stream.
It occurs to me that we should have set this up by explaining what the fuck the Taco Bell wedding even was.
Okay, so 2 venture capital ghouls from California signed up for so Taco Bell ran a promotional campaign for doing a stunt wedding. Now, this is not new for Taco Bell. Okay, let me back up even further. So Taco Bell, ever since Demolition Man came out, they have leaned into the idea of like Taco Bell as an ironic venue. And so they have one location in LA, the Cantina. It's actually a very large location. It has a whole upper floor that's an event space. It's actually like a really nice place. And just sort of the one twist about it is it's got that like ironic, like, yeah, you went and got married like at Taco Bell. You had your like board of directors yearly meeting at Taco Bell. And it sounds funny to say like at Taco Bell, but really you had it in like kind of a nice event space and it was catered by Taco Bell. But also like the Cantina has no qualms about you getting like Lakai to cater into their space as well. Like it's just an event space.
Just real quick, I want to point out, I'm looking at the website for the Taco Bell, the wedding package, which costs $777.
Yeah.
First thing on the list, things to know before you book. Weddings must be booked at least 4 hours prior to the ceremony. I like the idea that they assume the same level of commitment you have to Taco Bell, like the food as for your wedding, of just like, this isn't a drive-through wedding situation. You have 4 hours at least.
They should flip that around and say at most 4 hours.
Yeah.
Like, no, I could see at least 3. Like, I worked in a Subway where we would routinely get, like, people would order, like, the 6 foots. And it's like, all right, you need some planning just to produce that much food. You need to know it's coming so you can be properly staffed. But I would just put a range on at least 4, no more than 24.
Yeah. You're better than this if you can plan 2 days in advance. Yeah. Have you been, Leighton? Have you been to the Cantina?
No.
But you've heard, you know about it, right? Or weren't we talking about this?
Yeah, of course I know about the Cantina.
Okay, right. Yeah.
So Taco Bell's leaned into this like stunt wedding sort of thing for ages now. And every now and then they like do another like just kind of big one as a promotional campaign. And their version of it this time was like, oh, we'll do it not at the Cantina, we'll do it in the metaverse.
Mm-hmm.
So they ran a competition to... hey, couples who are looking to get married, if you would be willing to participate in this promotional stunt, we'll basically front you like a whole bunch of like stuff for the wedding. And it wound up being this Decentraland partnership. And so it's this like chain of events of you have a digital marketing firm who has real estate in Decentraland that is not being utilized. And so they go to one of their partners, Taco Bell, and are like, hey, would you be interested in doing some kind of like Taco Bell, promotional stunt utilizing our digital assets? And we'll arrange for somebody to like build the models and all of that and whatnot. You just need to handle kind of like the Taco Bell branding side of things. You need to sign off on like scope and da-da-da-da-da-da. Yeah. And Taco Bell says, fine. So they run the thing to find a couple willing to actually get married in this. And the winners of that campaign kind of just happen to be social media famous venture capital ghouls. Coincidentally, I suppose, but you could maybe wonder if, that chain of like of people who know people maybe goes a little bit farther than it appears on the surface.
It's just bells on bells on bells on bells.
Yeah. You open the door and it's a red lit room. It's like, all right, there's a couple red lights in here. And then inside the closet is red flags. And then there's a hidden door at the back and you're not sure what's inside that, but you're pretty sure it's going to be red too.
It's fire sauce.
Yeah. So that's kind of how like the whole thing sort of comes together. They do the thing. The build stayed up for like a week and then vanished. But then you get all the completely unhinged marketing speak around it of like the language of promotion applied in ways that make no sense whatsoever. Okay, so at the Cantina, you can get a Taco Bell wedding cake that is a giant Cinnabon.
Uh-huh.
So that's like a signature of like getting the tacky Taco Bell wedding. But so they had that recreated in Decentraland as the largest digital Cinnabon cake that we've ever made. And it's like, it's a digital asset. Its size is literally just math.
Yeah.
It is an illusion of math and photons. It's not real. You can make it infinitely big.
Oh my God.
So that's just ridiculous. There was a bouquet toss mini game that I'm going to try to describe with words how shady it was, and I hope I do it justice. Cal Penn, yes, that Cal Penn.
Yep.
Up on the Jumbotron doing the actual wedding, says to the attended people like, all right, it's like, we're going to do the bouquet toss. It's a mini game. It's in world. The bouquet is over on like this side of the venue. What you need to do is you need to go stand next to it and click on it as fast as possible.
Oh my God.
And when the timer goes off, click on it as fast as possible, and then we'll see who the winner is. And then remember, there's up to 11 different shards that this all exists on. Because some of the shards were like, there was like 1-2 people in. So there's certainly someone who's in a shard completely alone attending this metaverse wedding. But so the one that I was in, the busy one, a whole bunch of people go and like pile around the bouquet. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, I play a lot of idle games. And so I have an auto clicker installed and ready to go. And I have a shortcut for it on my Stream Deck.
Nice.
What do you think the input limit is for Decentraland? 60 clicks a second? 120? Let's find out. So I just like fire my auto clicker and like nothing happens.
Really?
So I'm standing next to it, clicking 120 times a second. Whole bunch of other people are standing around it clicking. Nothing happens. There's no animation. There's no feedback. There's no in-world anything. And then suddenly Calipan's like, oh, and the catcher of the bouquet is, oh, so-and-so who just happens to be like the bride's best friend.
Oh, come on.
And I'm like, okay, I see what happened here. There is zero scripted functionality here. There's no mechanics behind the scene. There was no bouquet toss.
That sucks.
So it's like, go click on this thing that does nothing. And then they decided the answer.
This is a great idea for a video game. Okay, I'm going to pitch a game to you guys. It's called Dot. And it's just a static image of a big red dot. The goal is just to click on the dot as much as possible until you win. And that's it.
The subreddit for Dot going crazy right now.
Going crazy, right? Yeah.
You're breaking the meta by even acknowledging this, dude.
All right. So we're going to move on to segments right now. I would love to literally spend an hour more talking about the Taco Bell wedding. I'm sure this is just the tip of the gordita, what we've heard so far, but I'm sure there's more to explore here. But we do have to move on. Our first segment is our pop culture recommendation segment. This is where you get to talk about a book, a movie, video game, something you've been enjoying from the world of pop culture or high culture, if you want. The segment is called What's Poppin', and the theme song, which we insert and post every week. So you're not going to hear it right now, but the audience will hear it, and it goes here.
What's poppin'?
What's poppin'? Great. That was the What's Poppin' theme song. Now, Dan, I'm going to ask you the question I like to ask all of our guests, which is, if you were to have heard that theme song, what would you have thought about it?
I'm going to be mean and just say like deep emotional sigh, like just,
I
just
can't
profound,
disagree.
Existential, like, why did I agree to any of this?
As an artist, all I hope is to make people feel something, and I can't control what other people feel. So the fact that affected you in any way, I'm going to chalk it up as a win for me.
Nah, you do good work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow.
Layden, what's poppin'?
I immediately cave. I cave under. I can't even do it.
And you
as
had
an
such
act.
positive reception from
Yes,
me too.
true.
What's poppin' for me, just really short. It's a YouTube video called Hieronymus Bosch Butt Music. And, you know, there's the triptych Hieronymus Bosch painting Garden of Earthly Delights.
Yes, of course. You got the little Bosch guys chilling out.
Yeah. In the hell section, there's music on a guy's ass, and somebody transcribed and played it, and it's beautiful. It is a really touching and gorgeous piece of music. So Hieronymus Bosch butt music, that's what's popping for me.
That's great.
See,
Brian,
when you said butt, I was like Hieronymus Bosch, comma, B-U-T. Music.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like,
Music.
we have like expressed Garden of Earthly Delights in music. This is far better. The fact that it's like, no, this is the music that Bosch painted onto the ass of a man in hell.
I also found there's like a big interactive, like super high definition version of that triptych that like they did Foley for. And so when you move around, it's just like a bunch of weird collections of Foley, and it's really cute.
Yeah, because the actual piece is huge, isn't it? It's like 6 feet tall.
I would not be surprised, but I would love to see that.
I don't remember. Yeah.
Where is it?
Whenever I go to like classic art museums, the big one for me, which it is for like a lot of people, is they go and see lilies.
Water lilies?
Water lilies. Monet. and they're shocked that it's like 8 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
Or that like persistence of memory is the size of like a postcard.
Yeah.
Anyway, Brian.
Yes.
What's poppin'?
What's poppin' for me is it is a book this week. It's by the writer Catherine Schultz, who is a writer for The New Yorker, and she does a lot of like science reporting and other things like that. But she has a really beautiful memoir called Lost and Found, which I think is from last year. And it is about the death of her father and then her finding the woman that would become her future wife. And it's got 3 sections: lost, found, and her writing is incredible. Like, she describes her father. Glowing isn't the right word. He just comes to life in a way that it's like, this man rules. Everything about him, and describing how she's dealing with grief and the process of grief and then kind of coming out of that and all that. I couldn't recommend it more highly. I love her writing, even independent of this. She has a really great essay actually about what an asshole Thoreau is, which is really worth reading. It's from probably 5-10 years ago. I can't even remember, but it's very, very funny. She does very deadpan like humor well. And she has a great essay on Thoreau and just what total dickbag the guy was, kind of a misanthropic, jerk. But the book that I'm talking about now is much more heartfelt. It's not really arch. It is funny in kind of a little bit of a gallows humor sort of way. But I love the book, and I can't recommend this book or her writing more highly.
Sick.
Yeah.
All right, Dan, what's poppin'?
What's poppin'? A documentary from 2016, 2017. I forget the date off the top of my head, but it's called Nuts. So call back.
Oh.
Directed by Penny Lane. It is a fantastic animated documentary based on the biography of John Romulus Brinkley, who was a doctor at the dawn of radio, who is inadvertently responsible for so much of the way that the modern world is currently organized vis-a-vis media. So it's based on this contemporary biography of John Romulus Brinkley, who was this doctor who could cure impotence. He had this method for curing impotence by placing a biopsy of a goat testicle into the patient. And the twist is that the biography that the documentary is based off of is completely fraudulent.
Awesome.
That Brinkley was in fact a quack. He wasn't even a doctor. But the way that Penny unfolds this story very gradually by first taking Brinkley at his own word, because it turns out that the biography was in fact like, it's independently written, but it was commissioned and basically written by him, and then cleaned up by an author. It's a glowing hagiography of the man signed off by himself, and just straight propaganda. So the way that it works through, like starting with the story that Brinkley approved of for himself, the myth that he told about himself, and then building up into the actual like reality. And so there's this turning point like in the 3rd act of the documentary where it moves into like the lawsuits, where this whole media empire that he had built just like falls apart because none of his cures work. He was in fact like operating intoxicated and has killed people on the operating table. And like many of the things that he's selling in the best case scenarios are basically just water, and in the worst case scenarios are like poisonous or toxic. And so there's this like decades long trail of bodies behind him, and just the way that the story is unfolded. So I'm kind of like air quote giving away the ending, because for people who are fans of like podcasts and movies about quack doctors in particular, Brinkley is a very well-known figure. So the fact that he's a quack and the fact that he's like a fraud is not like hidden information, but so just the way that the story is told by alternating like gradually between these 2 different versions of it is just an absolute like masterclass in documentary work and in addressing like the fact that documentary always imposes a lens on the material. So it's as much a documentary about the craft of documentary as it is about like Brinkley himself and about the way that like
That's great.
What is truth and who gets the privilege of like shaping truth. Because he was in the day like a very powerful man. He was extremely wealthy. He owned one of the most popular radio stations in America. You know, this independent radio station down in Texas that was like competitive with ABC up in the Northeast. And like, you know, people could hear it as far away as Michigan. And so then like he got shut down because he was broadcast. So he just moved it across the border into Mexico. And like, so you wound up with like, they were called like border blasters because Mexico was a lot more willing to just let him crank the wattage up. And so once he moved into Mexico where there was like no regulations on how powerful this thing could be, he had basically like a small power plant just feeding his radio station electricity so he could broadcast all the way to Canada.
Buzzsawing bandwidth all the way.
To the point that like his weekly broadcasts were contaminating like stations on both sides of the dial, you know.
Amazing.
You know, full degrees away from the actual bandwidth that he was broadcasting on. So like everything from like broadcast regulations to medical licensing to just really like so much about the way that the modern world works was dictated by this one guy just pushing every boundary he could in order to make fabulous amounts of money selling people fake cures.
That's awesome.
That sounds great. I want to watch that.
Yeah, so it's called Nuts.
Nuts. Is it streaming on anything?
I believe
I believe it's on Netflix.
All right, everybody, that's our show. Good job packing it in.
I know you can get it on Prime. I know it was on Crave here in Canada for a while, but it is findable.
Cool. Another great Penny Lane one is Listening to Kenny G.
Oh, it's so good.
People haven't seen that.
Yeah.
So I've been deep for various poorly considered reasons into smooth jazz. And gotta see it.
The details that the man just volunteers about his life are wild. Like, I would have never in a million years imagined that Kenny G would be that compelling of a subject.
I know. It's amazing. Yeah. All right.
Awesome.
Moving on, Layton.
That is what was poppin'. Now it's time for our final segment, which is 3 parts gratitude exercise and 1 part petty grousing. It's called Peaches and Lemons, and the theme song goes right here. Peaches and Lemons. Peaches and Lemons. All right, there was the theme song that we can all agree was amazing.
Yes,
we're each going to start with 1 lemon, which is a thing that is a minor bummer, inconvenience, what have you. I will go first because it's really bothering me. My lemon is, I pick at my nails and like, you know, all that a lot. But every once in a while you get one where it's like, why is this so deep? Why won't this go away? Why is this on the finger that I use all the time? It's incredibly painful. Like, this is dumb. Hangnails, dude. That's my really like well-articulated lemon. I just...
Oh man, now I want to change mine because I've also got a gripe about my nails.
Let's do it. Thematic lemons. Please.
Yeah.
Well, no, I've got a better lemon, but I don't know. Do I get 2 lemons? Because like,
sure,
you're allowed.
I was a lifelong nail biter. Like it was a huge problem as a kid. Like to the point like they would be bleeding regularly. I finally broke the habit in my 30s, and so now my like gripe about my nails is that like there's like a 2-day span of time where they're like long enough to look good, but then like 2 days later, it's like, nope, now they're too long. They're going to start catching on stuff. They're going to start chipping. They're going to start breaking. Mm-hmm. And it's like, this would be so much easier to manage if I was just constantly biting them down to nubbins to the point that they hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, join me.
What's your other lemon?
My original lemon is that like I resent that so much of my life has now been dominated by managing battery power in various devices.
Yeah.
That it's like my tablet, my phone, if you've got, you know, wireless headphones, my wireless mouse, it's like there's just so many devices in my life that it's like I use them every day and I need to manage their batteries.
And like which one of my USB-Cs consistently works with, you know, I have ones that work for my phone, but not my tablet. And then it's like, well, I have to get out a micro USB for this thing that I use all the time.
I was thinking about this in the context of, I could think of 2 things that I will never regret doing when the opportunity arises. One is trying to pee because maybe a situation might turn bad, and the other is charging my phone. Yeah. Like, if the chance is there, just do it. Yeah, try to pee, sure, why not? If you can charge your phone, yeah, great, do it. Because the consequences of not are bad enough that we don't want to deal with it. I will do my lemon.
Oh, yes, please.
Which is just my beloved 8-year-old daughter, Audrey, has not been sleeping well this week. And when a kid doesn't sleep well, it kind of throws the whole house into disarray. Waking up, walking around the house, and, coming into our bedroom. And it's, there's nothing cuter than a sleepy little kid getting up, but it's a lot less cute when it's at 2 a.m. and you're like, for the third night in a row, please just, okay. And then at some point you just give up and you're like, just sleep in this bed. I just have to go back to sleep. So poor kid sleep. That's my lemon. And I think, growth spurt, who knows why, something's going on and it'll all sort itself out. But yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Well, that was lemons. Now we'll each do 3 peaches, which are things that can be big or small that happened or that are going to happen or whatever. Just gratitude exercise. Nice stuff. I will do mine first. My first one is that excellent season of TV for big TV heads right now. I'm very behind on Barry, but I watched the first 2 episodes of season 4. I have an episode of Succession that I haven't seen yet. I just feel so content rich right now. My second one is that I've just been doing way more 3D stuff. I finally feel like I've reached a new level of proficiency with Blender where I feel way more confident with it. And I've just been making scenes that are of a much bigger scale than I have been. And it's a lot easier and more satisfying. I don't know. Creatively fulfilling. It's nice. My third peach is just Tom Kha, the soup.
Oh,
it hits sure. Every single time. It hits and is the most delicious thing in the world.
I thought that was a YouTuber for a second, Tom Kha. And I was like, who's that? Oh, no, Tom Kha. Yeah, got it.
Yeah, in my top 3 liquids of all time.
Great.
Miso soup is also in that top 3.
I don't want to hear the others.
Third one up for speculation.
Yeah.
All right, somebody else do their peaches.
Dan?
What are some peaches right now? I've been putting a lot of conscious effort into improving as a producer. And I mean that in the role sense of managing a project holistically. So I need some custom artwork done. I need an art commission done. There's a song that I want to use that one of my old college buddies wrote, but I definitely want permission to use that. And these are things that so often I will leave until I'm halfway through editing the project. And then it's right, I need that thing. Hey, who's available to do a rush job on that? And this time I'm I will need those things by mid-May or late May. So if I say mid-May and start shopping around early May, I'll have them by mid-May, and then if they get delayed, I'll definitely have it's just doing things on time instead of leaving it for the last second, instead of just shuffling. It's that's a problem for future Dan. He can deal with that in 2 weeks. Oops, it's 2 weeks later. Oops, 2 weeks later was a week and a half ago. So just trying to do a better job of thinking ahead on a project and managing the project as a whole. That's a peach in my life right now. Smoked Gouda.
Hell yeah.
Get a big box of just cheap crackers, but a nice smoked Gouda. You cut it into just little chunks. Great snack, hits any time of day.
Have you had, this is the name of the cheese, OG Cristal. It's a type of Gouda, and it's the best Gouda I've ever had.
Does it have little crunchy stuff in it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I like it when it has a little crunchies on it.
No, never
Every single
heard of
time
that.
I go to Aaron's, he rips it out, and we have red wine, and we eat our little smoked Gouda. It's great.
I got to check for that next time I'm down there. Let's see. A third one. I'm going to do the just things that are in my line of sight thing.
Great.
This plushed animal from a video game I love. This is some merch I bought recently, and it arrived a little while ago, and it is very adorable.
What's it from?
Oxygen Not Included. It's one of the games made by Clay. They also make Don't Starve and
gotcha, cool.
and a couple other things. So it's their colony sim game. I've got 10 2,100 hours in it over
Nice.
over the course of the pandemic. So it's in my line of sight. It's here. I like it. It also
Oh, God.
Wow.
they put a custom designed farter into it.
That's great.
Honestly, more plush toys should have fart boxes in them. Why don't they?
Writing down the word fart box. Great.
Ryan,
More fart box merch.
Yes, more fart boxes.
please.
All right, my peaches. Peach number one is it's another kid thing. She had her first piano recital
Nice.
and did a great job, and it was awesome. It's very cute to see a parade of kids, some as young as 4, get up there and awkwardly play piano pieces. Kid recitals, when they're not interminable, which this one was not interminable, 45 minutes in and out, great.
Nice.
Respectable.
They are the best. If you want pure comedy, go to see a dance recital of kids under 5.
Oh,
It is maybe the funniest thing you will ever see in your life. It is just great. Every emotion that a human can feel is on display on stage all the time.
It's weird to think back to my first piano recital and that like the piece I played was, I don't know, 15 seconds long.
Yep. There was a lot of twinkle twinkles and that sort of stuff. Audrey's piece, she played I'm raising a little gamer, and she played a Minecraft song, Wet Hands, from Minecraft Alpha.
And she played it for me when I visited y'all's house last week.
Yes.
And because I had briefly messed up my medication, I started crying because it was really beautiful and moving and touching that this little gamer was just going at it.
Yep.
And it was a beautiful moment. Anyway.
It's really great. Second peach. Now, this is a big one. After 165 hours, I have completed Elden Ring.
Nice. I rage quit at the finish line.
Like at the final boss.
No, Millennia just like drove me to the point of just like I was just seeing red. I was just so deeply angry. A game that I had been loving up until that point just turned sour. I speed ran through the final area, got to the last boss, put in about 10 attempts. Like it got to the point where I'm like, all right, I just need to kind of get like a little bit lucky and I'll have this. And it was just like, I don't feel like waiting until I get lucky, and just like uninstalled and haven't fired it up since.
It's I have to say, I say this at the risk of upsetting you. I did not have a hard time with Millennia. Like I tried maybe 20 times. And on the 20th, which was actually it was this morning that I did it. I got very lucky.
Yeah, no, what I suspect might have been the problem is that because I was like streaming it, 1, there's the pressure of like performance. 2, I think my capture card was introducing just enough latency because I was watching it via the like pass-through monitor rather than directly out of the PlayStation. And the fight is so precise that if it's like 99% of the time, a couple milliseconds lag, you don't even notice it. That fight, like it makes it basically undoable. But then there was also the fact that like try 10, 12 or something like that was literally the health bar is empty. The numbers read 0%. It's like hit her with literally anything. It's like throw a dagger, anything at all. And I would have had it. And I panicked, stepped into a bunch of goo and died. And it was like, okay, 30 tries later, never got that. It started boiling my blood.
That happened to me with Malakath, who on my second try, I beat, except it was right after he killed me. And then I had to do it 50 more times to beat him.
Which one was Malakath?
He pulls the giant death sword from his hand. He's in Crumbling Ferrum, Azula. He has this like triple slash. I don't remember the lore of the game well enough, but it's a late game boss right before the Erd Tree gets set on fire.
Sure.
It's the last required boss fight before the final one, I believe.
Before you go into the Crumbling City?
No, it's in the Crumbling City. It's the guy.
You
go up the big bridge and he's in the thing. So there's a site of grace below a bridge and you walk up. You can go either up or down. You go up and there's like a kind of Colosseum thing. There's a 2-phase thing. He's the Death Root guy.
Oh, he's the wandering prophet that you find, the beast prophet.
Yes, I think that's right. I can't keep track of who anybody is because also all their names start with M.
Yeah.
And it's like MAL something. That drove me nuts.
He was the one where I was like, I bailed on that. So I don't know if he was the end boss or like, it was like, okay, this is pretty obviously like the end of the game. But yeah, the big Coliseum. Were there 2 bosses in there? Like, are both of the bosses in that Coliseum?
Oh, there's one below that, the Godskin duo.
The Godskin duo
really
the Godskin
annoying.
duo had one shot.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. That one took me a while.
My build was cancer to them.
Oh, that's great.
I just happened to have a build that was extremely strong against them, and I had fought so many of them.
Yeah.
It did take me 2 attempts because I rolled into a wall and ate something on one of them. But yeah, that took 2 tries. Then you work your way up. You get into the big Coliseum.
Yes,
Dogman, Two-Phase.
That's the guy I'm talking about.
Yeah, I had his number, but I was too pissed off. Like, I was in, I'm just getting this over with mode. So, like, blowing through Godskin Duo, that kept my rage going. And then after, like, I don't know, 10 attempts on the guy where it was like, I basically had it, but just needed that extra little bit of luck or practice that I just didn't feel. Yeah.
I had never played a From Software game before. I love the try 20 times to beat the guy. I'm fine with that. I like Cuphead. I'm glad I played this game. I had a great time doing it. And I'm glad I can say I beat it.
I really, really loved the first 40 hours.
Yeah. It's the most we've ever talked about Elden Ring on this show. And I want to talk more about it because I'm very excited.
Listening to this conversation has been so funny. It just sounds like 2 guys giving each other directions. Like, you're going to turn left up there. There's going to be a lady with a big sword.
The lady with the big sword. It's like, no, it's like at the barn. It's like, no, the collapsed barn. You turn right at the collapsed barn. You turn left at the like barn. But they're both barns. It's like, but it's like the barn. You'll know the barn when you see it. You're driving. It's like, is that the barn? It's like, no. Like, you'll know when you see it.
That barn's not trying to kill you.
The shorthand, because my daughter would watch me play this game, we developed a shorthand, BCM, the acronym BCM, which stands for Big Crazy Monster.
Yeah.
And she'd be like, Daddy, I think there's a BCM over here. I see him walking around. And then she'll say stuff like, that's the BSCest M. It's very cute. Anyway, I do have one more peach, and I'll just get it out of the way real quick. We went to the Ren Fair this weekend as a family, and the weather was dialed in perfect, like not too hot, not too cold, just perfect Ren Fair weather. And that was great because normally it's way too fucking hot.
It sucks.
And it sucks. Bad. You get there and you just immediately want to be out of the sun and there's not a lot of shade. This could not have been better. That's my final peach. I am done with peaches.
Wow. We did it. That means we're at the end of the show.
We are. Dan, thank you so much for being here. This is a lot of fun. As I said, we're both huge fans of what you do, and it's really an honor
this is a pleasure.
Well, thanks for the invite. This was fun. I can talk. I've very much enjoyed it. I like talking, and this has been a good talking. This has been a really enjoyable talking.
Excellent talking.
Yeah, totally.
If people want to find you on social media or check out your YouTube channel or anywhere else you want to point people, where should they go? If they want to find you in Decentraland?
In Decentraland, you'll see me wandering around as Default Brad. You can find me on Twitter for the duration of that platform's lifespan as Foldable Human. I'm on most social media as Foldable Human. Whether I'm active on that or not is a giant question mark. YouTube, the channel name is Folding Ideas. You can find me in real life in Calgary, Alberta, and please don't stalk me. Don't stalk me, bro.
Don't stalk me. Finally, a guest who has the balls to say, "Don't stalk me."
Yeah.
Brian, would you like to wrap up this? I feel like the emotional labor of wrapping up the episode always falls to me, and I'm a pretty good talker, but I feel like I lose all ability to be a good talker the moment that this last little part happens.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll finish it up with some inspiring concluding thoughts.
Okay.
And just to kind of put a point on this, I'd like to say, so when you're facing off against Radagon, you're going to want to level up your Spirit Ashes to like +10. So Black Knight Tish works really well against him. So summon him. You can mix your Wondrous Physic so that you get the one, I think it's the Cerulean Crack tier that doesn't consume FP. That's going to be crucial, but don't use it in the first phase of that battle. You're going to want to use it against the Elden Beast later. You're going to seem like you want to use it, but don't. Also, dodge. Learn how to dodge. That's the other thing I'll say, because that's going to be crucial.
All right, everybody. Dodge.
Dodge. Bye.
Goodbye.
Late Night is produced by Brian Wecht, Leighton Gray, and Jarek Centeno. Follow us on Twitter at Leighton Night, on Instagram at Leighton_Night, or email us at leightonnight@gmail.com.